What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It's a brand new episode of Bets and Banter, and today it's going down live. We're talking UFC Vegas 94, and because it's Bets and Banter, we cannot do it alone. We got a great guest. It's somebody that you guys know and love if you've been here before. Just win, baby. Back in the building. How are you, my man?
What's up, bro? Good to be back. Yeah, been on holiday. We had that week off. Smashed last week, 12 units, and ready to get into this, man. Later than planned,
yeah.
but always the case with Liam, eh?
Hey, I did terrible last week, and so I had to do a lot of research this week. Feel like I'm ready to go for the show. And my man, I slept since I did my research. I woke up, it was 3:45 in the afternoon. I said, holy shit, we need to get going right now. So we're here. We're ready to party. It's 4 o'clock, 24 Eastern time. So thank you guys for rocking with us. Thank you to everybody who's here. Sharpest chat in the game is already assembled. So guys, without further ado, let's talk about the first fight of the night like we always do on Bets and Banter. It's Mohammed Usman, the motor, taking on Thomas Peterson, the train. So, something's going to run into each other here. We got a motor versus a train. There's a lot of machinery involved here. Rich, how do you feel about this first fight of the night?
Yeah, I like the Peterson side. I don't mind the KO angle either. I think he's got his octagon jitters out of the way. That first fight with Pogues where he was the favorite. And I don't like Usman, man. The UFC have never given him a push, always been on Apex cards, never promoted into a pay-per-view. He looks like a scary guy, but his only KO is against Zach Porger, who's, not for real and tiny. So, yeah, I don't like him, man. And I think he's got bitch in him, to be honest, if he finally faces some adversity. And I think Peterson's the one to do that. We know he's got a wrestling base. If he can get Usman on his back, I can definitely see him quitting. So, yeah, at an underdog price, Peterson's the side for me. But if you want to take that, I'd get in there now because I don't think it's going to last, man. The line's been closing.
Yeah, Rich, I have one bet on this fight card so far, and it was Thomas Peterson on the money line. He's never been an underdog before, right? You just look at his style and what he brings to the table at heavyweight. He's the kind of guy that you typically would favor to win fights. He can go out there and attempt a lot of takedowns. If the fight's on the feet, he's not the best striker you've ever seen, but he doesn't fuck off very easily, right? Waldo had to land a ton of strikes on him. They had a competitive fight, and he lost that one. He was heavily favored to win it before they fought. Waldo is now having a lot of success in the UFC. Then you look at his most recent loss, again, against Jamal Pokes. He went out there. He attempted, a bunch of good offense. I thought at the end of round one, he was doing really well. He had just gotten to his takedown too late. And then in round two, I think he had just absorbed too much damage. People were talking about he slowed down a little bit. I don't know if he even slowed down as much as he just got beat up. And he was like, fuck, I can't really take too many more of these clean. He stayed in the pocket. He didn't get finished over 15 minutes there. But I thought that, like you said, UFC jitters are a thing, right? He was favored to beat Jamal Pokes as well. And now he's an underdog coming against Usman. And I've been an Usman truther in the past, telling people like, guys, just because he's not as good as Kamaru doesn't mean he's not going to win fights. That they're putting him against, the worst guys in the UFC's heavyweight division. But I think Peterson has now been lumped in with the worst of the worst because he's a little bit green. But I actually think he's got the right raw components there. I think he's got the right skills. And honestly, I just have never seen Usman tested in the wrestling. Nobody's attempted a takedown on him since he was in the PFL. So it's like, let's find out if that's working, because I do think there's a decent possibility that if Thomas Peterson hits one outside single in the first round, that the fight is over. So the way I view it, Rich, I made a bunch of money on Thomas Peterson on Contender Series. I bet him by submission 11-1. That was his first ever career submission. And in my write-up, I actually called the Key Lock Americana Series. That's what he goes for all the time. We saw Jake Collier lock in like a fully cinched Kimura to end the fight with Usman. And just because he had done nothing else the rest of the round, you couldn't give it to him. But the fight was as good as done, in my view. He had it behind his back, which is one of the worst spots for it to be. And so when you see that kind of situation, it's just like, I know that this guy, if he gets him to the ground, is going to try and lock his arms up. And it didn't seem to me like Usman has the first clue what he's supposed to do in that situation. So I don't know that he necessarily has the strength to pull it off, but I think he's going to try it. And again, it's like 10-1 or something. So something I'll be looking at this week. But that's a shitty heavyweight fight. It's a great way to get us started. And with that being said, my man, let's move on to this next one. In the women's flyweight division, which has been confirmed, right? We had a little bit of back and forth on the first look this week about whether this fight was going down at 125 or 135. I wasn't quite sure myself, but I believe Pudilova via her Instagram confirmed this fight will be at 125 pounds. And so if that's the case, I want to see the weigh-in on this one personally, Rich. I know that Luana Carolina has a habit of not necessarily making the weight. However, she's gone out there and gotten a bunch of wins at the UFC level, and Lucy Pudilova has really struggled to do the same. So I'm curious about your thoughts on this one, Rich. Pretty close line as well. I think it's like minus 110 apiece. How do you feel about this matchup?
Yeah, why would the weight matter to you? If Carolina missed weight, would you be more inclined to bettor or fader?
I want to just see how she looks on the scale, because I do think she gives up a lot to make 125 pounds in terms of it's a difficult cut for her. And sometimes I don't like to see, my fighter come in with terrible optics on the scale, miss weight, all those kind of things. So that's all. I just wouldn't want to get invested early. And right now it's not like you're giving up much value, right? It's all chalked out, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't really care about the weight, whether she misses, whether she makes it. I don't care about the bout. To be honest, there's no way I trust either girl with my money in this particular fight. Neither are trustworthy. I could see it going one of two ways. Carolina gets some top time. She burns the clock and gets a decision. Or Pudilova is going to stuff the takedowns and do more on the feet with the volume. That's the way I see it going. And either one of them could fuck that up. So I don't want to trust them, man. Pudilova, she had a stint in the UFC back in the day. Her ground game was a deficiency. She even got subbed by Shevchenko, I believe it was, or TKO'd. It was one of the two, but it was takedowns. That was her biggest problem. She's a striker. She wants to keep it on the feet. I think people are giving her too much credit for the Perez fight. Perez lost that fight. It was nothing that Pudilova did that makes me think, she did anything great. It was Perez gassing, man. And I don't think Carolina's going to gas like Perez did. So, if I had to pick a side, I'd say I'd like Carolina to win a decision by getting takedowns and laying on it. That's always been the way with Pudilova. That's how she loses fights. And I can see it happening again, man.
It's funny, Rich, because Lucy Pudilova, you're absolutely right. She was a striker that was having a lot of failure in the UFC because she kept getting taken down. And then she came back as like a takedown merchant, It's just funny, like, she tried to like change her game plan on the regional scene and be more effective, certainly to round out her game a little bit. But I don't know that her physicality is all there. I think that that's been a big struggle for her. To your point, what was the biggest difference between her and her last opponent, Aylin Perez? Physicality, right? And as soon as Aylin Perez didn't have the physicality to push anymore, she really started to like fall off a cliff in that fight. But when she was able to just exert her physicality, she was just throwing her around, dominating her physically. And I think that for Lucy Pudilova, that's been a continuous problem. Even looking back at the Jocelyn Edwards fight, Jocelyn Edwards didn't know as much about jiu-jitsu or techniques or positions. It didn't seem like to me. She just had better strength physically in some of those positions to get back up. So I'm looking at a Luana Carolina here who's got like a pretty solid record overall as a pro. She's 10-4. In the UFC, she's 5-3. And then I'm looking at a Lucy Pudilova on the other side, and she's got a 3-7 record in the promotion, just awful, on a 2-fight losing skid. And she's got a terrible record as well as a professional, 14-9. For me, I could only probably click on the Carolina side if I was going to make a play on this fight. But unless she sees plus money, I will not feel compelled to do so. That's for sure. Next up, we've got Loic Radzhabov taking on Trey Ogden. This one's going down in the lightweight division. And I don't feel like betting on this fight. Trey Ogden has a weird style of fighting. He's got no wins recorded via knockout in his career. And I got to give him the hats off, though. He's had a lot of pro fights as well. I think like 24 pro fights, and he's never been knocked out either. So he's kind of done a good job managing fights where it's like, hey, let's make this a grappling match. Let's make it a wrestling match or a really low-stakes striking fight. Hey, who could touch each other more? Who could kick to the leg more? Things like that. He's just done a good job avoiding damage. But when you look at the Loic Radzhabov side, a little bit more violent, a little bit more willing. He's going in there to throw hands, to exchange a little bit. Not the most technical fighter you've ever seen, but he can wrestle as well. Pretty big, strong guy for 155. I think Trey Ogden, in his recent run, I don't know if he's on new supplements. I don't know what he's on. He looks jacked before these fights. Like there's a picture going around of him and Miles Johns before John's last fight where I was like, yo, I am not fading Miles Johns this weekend. And that's the kind of thing where he's looking like bricked up, but Loic Radzhabov's the same thing. It's kind of surprising that he makes the weight class. He's a big guy. And the one fight he looked terrible was the fight where he fucked up his weight cut against Rizbeki, and he got his leg shut down. So I feel like as long as he doesn't get shut down by calf kicks or something here, I expect him to probably win the exchanges on the feet. So I understand why he's favored, but it's not a fight for me that I feel compelled to bet. How about you, Rich?
Yeah, I want to bet this fight. I like the Loic side. If somebody knows what the submission prop is, post it in the chat because it wasn't there when I looked before we recorded this. But I don't like Ogden, man. I think he's a bitch, to be honest. I think he's a jiu-jitsu guy playing MMA. He's got no hands. You know, he's just waiting to time people's strikes so he can go for double legs, get his takedowns. I don't even think his jiu-jitsu is that great, to be honest. I don't like his 2 recent wins. And let's be honest, he did beat Motta. That was bullshit by the ref. He was on his way to winning. But yeah, Kurt Holliber, he fought. Kurt's got no takedown defense. You know, he was able to have his way. But Loic can negate that, man, and he can keep it on the feet. And that's where Ogden isn't going to have a chance in hell. And I think if it does go to the ground, you know, Loic's fought some good people, man, back in the PFL days as well. You know, he's still relatively young. He's had some bad matchups in Rebecki, who was able to light him up on the feet. You know, a strong guy, especially early. But I don't see what Ogden's bringing to the table in this fight, man. So I like Loki a lot. I like the price, and I think the submission is very sneaky. You know, like Virna in the main event, I think people see Ogden as this jiu-jitsu wizard, and he's not. He has been subbed a few times, and I think it can happen again, man.
Yeah, so I tend to agree with you, right? Like I said, he's done a good job neutralizing those violent finishes with the hands, but he hasn't done a good job avoiding the submissions, right? We talked about leading up to his UFC career, how I could never trust a guy who's been submitted twice by Thomas Gifford, right? And it's like Thomas Gifford did have a good submission game, but still, it was just concerning to see you have 2, you know, chances against a guy, and both times you go out there and do the exact same thing, get submitted very quickly. You know, with again, a maneuver I love, the guillotine, close to my heart. But again, if somebody hits you with one move, fool me one time, shame on you. It's like, fool me twice, can't get fooled again. And for Trey Ogden, I do think that he went out there against Jordan Levitt. He had a good guillotine attempt. That's actually why I bet Chase Hooper via submission against Jordan Levitt. I was like, yo, if Trey Ogden's putting you in a guillotine, Chase Hooper is sending you home packing. And that was exactly what we saw there. So I do think of Trey Ogden maybe a grade below in the jiu-jitsu. I think the way he would submit somebody like Loic Radzhabov, if he could, would have to be late. You know, it would have to be Loic getting tired, because I do think Loic, he kind of fights like he's going out of business. You know, it's like by the end of the 10-minute mark, he's like, and he can normally find a way to keep pushing. But if Trey Ogden has the gas to keep going, I think that's the angle people are looking for with the Ogden submission here. But yeah, early going and fresh, I think that Loic's going to be the one who's doing more damage and probably dominating the wrestling exchanges.
That's a problem on the Ogden side, though, man. When he faces adversity and he can't just, like, you know, take Kurt down and lay on him. We've seen it in the Jordan Levitt fight. He gasses too, man. He hasn't got good cardio. Like you said, he is built. You know, he has got a lot of muscle on him. And yeah, if you push him, man, and, you know, you're rolling around and giving him something to think about, I think he can gas too, man. So, yeah, I don't think the cardio dump is all on the Loic side.
Fair play. And that Kurt Holliber fight, I mean, he really just didn't face much resistance in that fight.
Exactly.
You know, with all due respect to Kurt, it just, he had an easy path to victory and he took it over and over and over again. But in any case, we can move along to the next fight here. We've got Miranda Maverick taking on Dione Barbosa. And I have to do a little bit more research on Dione Barbosa. I did get to a lot of the research I wanted to before this show. That was one where I just did not get to go back and watch her footage. I remember I recommended the fight not to go the distance in the Rain Guerrero fight. I believe that was on the Contender series. She ended up submitting her in that fight via armbar. So she clearly is versed on the ground. She's got a judo background. She's big. She's physical. She knows how to strike a little bit. For me, you know, Miranda Maverick has a lot more professional experience. There was a time in her career where I was very high on Miranda Maverick finishing props and, you know, things like that. Just I thought she was a talented girl. And I just haven't loved what I've seen from her in some of the recent bouts. You know, the Andrea Lee fight was fine, but not altogether, you know, something that would blow your hair back. The Priscilla Cachoeira fight doesn't tell me much. That's how Priscilla Cachoeira gets beat. She takes an absolute whooping, and then you finish her in the second or the third round. And then Shanna Young, somebody that she had submitted in the first round. She goes back out there for the rematch. She goes to a unanimous decision. Did not love to see that. Losing to Jasmine Jasuda Vicious is fine if you get out wrestled, out grappled. She got beat up. Her face was messed up in that fight as well. So I'm not sure where I'm at with Miranda Maverick. Certainly not in the business of laying huge chalk prices on WMMA. My gut feeling was that she was going to win this fight, but it seems like there's a lot of public sentiment behind her. She does have the UFC experience, like I mentioned, but I just haven't loved what I've seen from her in her last couple fights. How about you, Rich?
Yeah, I kind of think the same, man. And I don't blame you. Look at the Andrea Lee fight, man. She nearly got fucking subbed. Andrea Lee was a punch bag in that fight. She didn't show up, and she wasn't even able to put her away. In this fight, I think that she wins Maverick, but I do think she loses the first round. I think Barbosa is going to be strong. I think people are going to think she was a great underdog bet and wish they had a bet her. And then I just think she's going to throw it away in rounds 2 and 3. Her cardio isn't great. She plays off her back a little bit too much, trusting in her jiu-jitsu, which isn't that great. I like Maverick to win rounds 2 and 3 and get the decision, man. Just based on athleticism, better cardio. But yeah, Maverick's a head case, man. I'd never be betting her at minus 200. I certainly wouldn't be parlaying her or any of that shit. But maybe if you like your sprinkles, Maverick sub 2-3 could be something. Barbosa does gas, man. So we'll see what the pace is like. I can get in live, man. Unibet do fucking live props and they do stupid numbers. But anyway, Maverick is the side for me. But the price is horrible, so no bet.
Yeah, I'm not liking the prices on this one inherently. And just looking back, like Jenna Bishop, tough girl, but not altogether the most athletic fighter, right? She's a little bit slow. She's a little bit plodding, and she was able to win that fight. Josie Nunez is tiny, right? She throws up, and she does have big power. We've seen that, but again, to have that finish loss on your record, not loving that look either, because we know that girls with good takedowns in jiu-jitsu can dominate Josie Nunez. So
Bishop dropped her as well, man. So yeah, that's a fucking concern as well. She might be chinny. Got knocked out by Nunes, who's like fucking 4 foot. Dropped by Bishop, who hasn't got hands. She's a jiu-jitsu girl, so not a great.
And I have to rewatch it, but I think that she was getting lit up a little bit in the third round by Ernesta Carrasquete. If my memory is serving me correctly, that was my memory of the fight and why I wasn't so bullish on her.
Yeah, she's shit.
In any case, guys, we can move along to the next fight here. We wish them both the best, but no betting action for me there. We've got Brian Boom Kelleher taking on Cody Gibson, and this is a fascinating fight to me, Rich, on a number of levels. Listen, Brian's back is against the wall here. If he loses this fight, he's getting cut from the UFC, period, point blank. But he's 4-4 in the promotion, right? He's put together a decent record, and he hasn't been beating the best high-quality opponents that he's fought. But if you look throughout his run, throughout his career, he's got a lot of really solid wins, right? And so my question is just like, how past it is Brian, ultimately? Because if Brian can find, some version of himself, he could definitely win this fight, right? Cody Gibson, number one, is not a very good UFC fighter. You just look at his record over time. He's had many opportunities, and he's underperformed expectations. Going out there, he has one win. I posted it on my Twitter this week, guys. That Johnny Bedford win is a comedy. Go back and watch it. It's a hysterical fight. Johnny Bedford comes in, throws a bunch of big shots at Cody Gibson. Then Cody Gibson pushes him back off the fence, runs forward, throws the craziest right hand you've ever seen. The guy falls back fully awake, and the referee jumps in between them. It's the weirdest fight ever. But in any case, I watched that back, and I'm like, okay, that is the upside of Cody Gibson. He does have some good wins regionally as well, so I'll give him that, right? Brian Kelleher beat Julio Arce, the only guy I think to ever submit him in pro MMA, right? It's no, this guy was fucking serious when he was in Ring of Combat. That's why he got the call up to the UFC. Hunter Azure, he knocked him out. That was a beautiful shot by Brian Kelleher and one that he needed to win the fight. So does the guy have good finishing instincts? Does he have dangerous skills? He got a good calf kick. He's got pretty decent punches, and he's got a guillotine, which is 3 of the 4 losses on Cody Gibson's record are via guillotine. That's Brian's move. I think he's got 7 of them. So I'm just I feel like Brian Kelleher could go out here and fucking finish this guy. honestly, and he's doing it for his job. So he's either going to win this fight or he's going to be unemployed on Sunday morning. And I kind of like betting on those guys at plus 160 that have UFC wins compared to a guy in Cody Gibson who doesn't, who I think was the closest to getting finished by Brad Katona in 5 years. Like, unbelievable. So, yeah, I missed the number here a little bit on Kelleher, but I feel like he's the side. How about you, Rich?
Yeah, the number has come down. Kelleher is the side. It should have been minus 110 apiece, and it wasn't, so it was an easy click. Gibson's shit himself, man. Like you said, no UFC wins. He's a front runner. He's good for a round. Then he goes into autopilot mode. Brian has finishing instincts. He can KO you. He has power, hence the name. Boom. Fucking, he's got a guillotine on him. Like you said, that's how Gibson loses. Gibson's going to implement takedowns, so that opportunity is going to be there also. And yeah, whoever loses this one is probably going to get fired. But I don't understand the price. It didn't make sense. It easily could have flipped, and you make fucking what's his name? Gibson, the big underdog. The guy's a part-time teacher per Instagram. He's in Disneyland with his fucking family, not even training. Who knows what his motivation's like, man. So yeah, Kelleher all day for me at this price.
That was the other thing I was going to mention is I do think that Cody has like a backup plan, right? Which is like, hey, I could go back. I got this life teaching. And for Brian, it's like, what is he going to be, a fucking rapper? Is he going to do like Brian still thinks he can compete at the UFC level? And honestly, I agree with him. He hasn't been match made very appropriately lately, and he's been getting exposed as a result of that. But I think if you put him in there with guys that aren't, top 15 level, a Mario Bautista, a fucking Cody Garbrandt, former champion, I think that he could still go out there and get wins. Can he beat the upper echelon guys? No, that's not what Brian's going to bring you to the table these days. But he came back from that neck surgery, and that was my biggest concern, was like, how is he going to look? I thought he still looked aggressive. I thought he still wanted to be there. He just got hit by big right hands, by a guy who could throw big right hands. It was an unfortunate matchup for him. So let's see if he's got one more left in the tank.
Bro, you missed off Umar. He faced Umar, Mario, and then Cody, and now he's facing Gibson. Like, it's the biggest step down ever. So yeah, we should all.
Although I will say he did look a level below those guys, right? There was no illusions about like, oh, maybe on a better day he beats Umar.
Oh yeah, for sure. But that was expected going into the bout, in my opinion.
Absolutely. My screen is like half frozen over here, Rich. You want to get us started on the next fight?
Yeah. Who is it? It's Amel versus Lee. So yeah, I like Lee. Shout out to my fucking self because I bet Amel by KO against Fernie Garcia. But, big whoop. Fernie Garcia was coming up to 145, short notice. He was 0-3 in the UFC anyway. So is that really something to brag about, beating him? Nope. And there was even a moment in that fight where I thought, I'm not going to get this KO. I'm going to get fucked because the ref isn't stepping in. He's too wild, Amel. I suspect he has ground problems from the fights that I've seen. It just hasn't been exposed yet. I like Lee. He's a good prospect. He's on steroids. He's got cardio. He carries his power late. He's technical with his striking, and he's got sneaky jiu-jitsu. The submission is plus 700. I like that a lot. I like Lee to get the win, man, and I like him to get a finish over Amel, who's just too reckless. I think he's going to get found out. You can't just keep ball rushing people thinking you're going to overwhelm them and fuck them up. Sooner you're going to hit a brick wall, man. And I think that's going to be Lee. So, yeah, Lee for the win.
There you have it. This is an interesting one to me, Rich, because I did think early in the week that I would probably be on the Hyder and Mill side. I've now gotten cold feet a little bit. The thing that I like about Hyder is you kind of know what you're going to get from him. He's going to come forward and try and fucking kill somebody until he's dead. It's like that's a pretty good guy to bet on in some cases. But to your point, I listened to Santino DeFranco, who's gotten to work with Yeong Lee in the lead up to this fight. And obviously he's not going to give a prediction on the winner or anything like that. But what he did talk about is the guy's physical strength is unbelievable. He's like, when you get a hold of this guy, like you think you're going to be able to move him or do something and just, you can't, right? He's just like very heavy set, and to your point, right? You called it steroids, call it whatever you want, right? The guy is just fucking unbelievably, he's got a great physique, right? And when you're looking at Hyder Amil, he's 34 years of age, right? He's quite old to be making a run as a professional fighter. Doesn't mean you can't do it, right? 34 isn't ancient, but when you're talking about this weight class, most of the guys that are seasoned vets that have had, 10, 15, 20 UFC fights are this age, not guys that are coming into the promotion, still getting their feet wet as pro fighters. And so if you come from the El Nino Training Center, Gilbert Melendez, like you've been around the right guys, you got the right kind of seasoning on the way up. But for Jiang Li, it does seem like the kind of guy they're trying to build as a long-term prospect. Younger, right? 28 years of age, to your point. He's the bigger guy. He's going to have a height advantage. He's going to have a reach advantage coming into this contest. And on top of that, you look at a guy in Jiang Li, he's never been finished, right? 4-1, career to the decision, but that's the only time that he's lost. And I think that that's, a pretty durable guy, a pretty tough guy to get out of there. And the one thing about Hyder Emil is if he can't get you out of there, he spends himself kind of within that 10-minute range. So it's like round 3, Hyder Emil, even in fights where he's winning, tends to start holding on for a little bit of life, right? Going for bad takedowns, just doing anything to get to that end point. And for me, that's a little bit concerning, going against a guy who's never been finished. So I don't have the strongest feeling on this fight. I'm certainly not as bullish as my guy Rich, but I understand why Jiang Li is favored after my research process. So I might end up passing on Hyder Emil. Next up, we've got Cody Durden taking on Bruno. Or actually, no, I'm jumping ahead. I'm getting ahead of myself, man. We got the main card opener, the Korean Superboy, Doo-Ho Choi, taking on Bill Algeo, who I am marginally surprised to see favored in this one, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Rich. How do you feel about this matchup?
I like Algeo, and I like him by decision. I don't like Choi, man. I don't know where his head's at either since coming back. I went back and watched his first fights, where he was just KOing everybody like a sniper in round 1. But yeah, he fell off the wagon, man. And 2 concerning fights for me were the losses to Stevens and Jourdain. He didn't get KO'd. He got TKO'd. And it was because he shelled up after getting hit one good time. And I don't even think the punches he got hit with by either of the guys was anything spectacular. It wasn't something where I'd have expected it to be fight ending. But yeah, it looks to me like he doesn't like getting hit, man. And that's not good if you're fucking fighting. So I like Algeo. I think a finish could be on, but I lean the decision. Yeah, I just don't think he's going to knock Algeo out. Algeo, he's been KO'd once or TKO'd once, and that was the last fight against Nelson, and even that was debatable, depending whether you had a bet on the fight or not, because it was a bit suspect, the ending to that fight. But yeah, I like Algeo to outwork him. Algeo's got good BJJ, decent cardio, volume, pressure, everything you'd want in a fighter. He's going to fight for your money. So Algeo is the side. I don't love the price tag, so I don't know if I'm going to make a bet, but I can't bet Choi in this position, man.
I got to tell you, I think first and foremost, both the Choi's, because we're going to discuss another one, are on steroids. So let's be very clear about that. That's my humble opinion, right? Do not sue me. I'm just a guy from, my home base looking at people's Instagram photos going, holy shit, when did these guys get so jacked? And dude, if you look at them, there's a photo they took like a week ago with the Korean Zombie, and they're just looking shredded. And I was like, oh boy. So for me, that was the one thing where I'm like, okay, physically, I think these guys are going to come in prepared. Then you look at the fact that we've got a common opponent, right? And Doo-Ho Choi went out there against Kyle Nelson and arguably deserved the decision. Tough one. Dana gives him his money, right? And he had a year off since that fight. And I think that what he's been doing is training because he looks like he's fucking jacked. So I'm like, okay, my man has been putting in some work. On the other side for Bill, I listened to his media day, and I did like what I heard from him. I'll be frank about that, right? He said, hey, listen, I went out there in my last fight, it didn't go my way, but I didn't know I was fighting Kyle Nelson until a week before the fight. He's like, I'm out there training and whatever. I'm building up my gym. And my coach said to me, Kyle Nelson does this. He's like, what, does that guy fight at 45 or 55? He's like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, no. He's like, well, you're fighting him in a week. He's like, oh shit. Okay. He didn't even know who he was fighting. And so that's not a great sign in terms of preparation, things like that. But he said for this fight, he was a lot more dedicated to figuring out, all right, who's my opponent? How do I beat him? What are their skills? This kind of thing. And essentially it sounded to me like Algeo is going to go out here and try and grapple, right? It sounds like he's going to go out there and try and, push his wrestling and his grappling on Doo-Ho Choi. And that might work, right? I said that his best win in his career was beating Joe Anderson Brito and just like taking him down, outlasting him in some of those wrestling and grappling scrambles, keeping it moving, keeping it rolling. But the thing about Algeo that's been concerning me and that I should have seen coming a little bit more before the Kyle Nelson fight is he's been getting dropped. He's been getting hit. He's been getting hurt. He's just always done a really good job of like not getting finished as a result of it, right? He's like a very stingy guy. He finds a way to keep it going. In the Apex Center, maybe he'll do a better job like leaning against the fence instead of getting out into open space where he really just had wobbly legs and he was getting pushed around by the punches. So the referee was forced to intervene there. I thought on the night it was a horrific stoppage. And I still don't think it's a great stoppage in terms of like, if you want to rank order what their leash is for fighters, like they let a lot of fighters take more damage than that. So I don't think it's about fighter safety. I think it's about other things. But when you look at how Bill was reacting, right, he got hit with a couple of clean right hands, and every time he would lose his legs. And that for me is like, that gives them a chance to stop it. That gives them an opportunity. Also, if the guy is like, smart, it gives him a chance to get a free takedown. Right? If your legs are wobbling all over the place, fucking push the guy hard, square in the chest. He's falling over. It's like, I think that Kyle Nelson kind of let that fight keep going because he didn't want to press. He didn't want to get too close to Bill and like let him wrap up overhooks and shit like that. And I think that Duho Choi, kind of the same mark. I don't think he's gonna get in there and try and fucking dig underhooks with Algeo and push him around on the fence. I think he's gonna try and snipe him with big punches from the outside, and that's the kind of thing that for me, I'm like, man, coming off a knockout loss, if he had 9 months, I'm like feeling better about the Algeo side, but he's coming back very quickly. He lost to Nelson, and even if it's an early stoppage, I think he was pretty undoubtedly concussed, right? He got hit very hard several times. He was wobbling all over the place. After the fight, they're like holding him by the shoulders. He's still a little bit wobbly. I think he was concussed there. So it's like, probably didn't go right back to training. And then when he does get back to training, he's thinking to himself, I got this guy. And the footage on Choi, I'll agree with you. There was some concerning footage. It was 4 years ago, 6 years ago. It's like the guy just hasn't had much of a recent sample size. So it's hard to know. It's hard to draw conclusions. But for me, what I did see is against the same common opponent, he managed the energy better. He didn't get as much damage, and he did more damage. So I just feel like Duho Choi probably should be a little closer to a pick'em price. And I don't love the situation for Algeo. I think everything at parity, these guys are all the same age. They had the same amount of time off between fights, all those things. Maybe I feel a little bit better about favoring Algeo, but I just think there's some things working against him here. And like I started this analysis with, I think Choi is on all the supplementation. I don't think Algeo is. So take that for whatever it's worth. Next up, guys, we got a main card bout going down between Cody Durden and Bruno Silva about who's the better Trump supporter. They both just have Trump flags, this, that, this, that, and the third on their all over their social media. I'm playing, but in any case, we've got Cody Durden on the one hand, very solid wrestler, wants to go out there and stick to you, get that decision victory. He's only got one finish in the promotion against JP Buys. And meanwhile, on the other side, you got Bruno Silva, who has struggled in fights that have gone the distance, but when he is able to get off on his offense, he showed in that fight against Tyson Nam the club and sub ability, right? The ability to transition and have good finishing instincts. But also in some of the fights that he's lost, the David Dvorak fight, he still was showing off that front kick to the face where he blasts people up the middle. He's got very good timing and range on his kicks. And all that does concern me just a little bit for a guy like Durden, who I think he's a good boxer, but I do think he's going to be constantly coming forward, entering the pocket, dipping his shin in. And I do think that Bruno Silva is going to try and time him for big uppercuts, big shots, 1-2s, and that front kick up the middle. So basically it's a fight where I think if it goes the cards, it's probably going to be a Cody Durden fight. He's probably going to have gotten some takedowns along the way, maybe gotten some of the fight out of his opponent, but I don't know that I'd like to have a Cody Durden ticket if this fight ends inside the distance, because I think that Silva's fucking dangerous, man. I think he can hit you one time with that kick to the face, change the complexion of the fight. So tricky fight for me here, but kind of think that the plus money on Bruno Silva's the side here. How about you, Rich?
I like Durden. I like Durden by submission. I like his size. I think he's 5'7" against 5'4". I think that'll help with the grappling. Obviously, he's going to try and implement a heavy grappling game, and I think he's going to have his way. I don't like the wins on the Bruno side. Nam, who's like fucking 50. Rodriguez, who I didn't even know who that kid was. I had to like look up his record. There's someone else he beat as well. That was didn't impress me much.
JP
JP buys, bro. So yeah, I like Durden, man. But it's probably lined right. I think Durden can be a letdown in fights when he should win. You know, he likes to get himself subbed as well. That's never good. But I don't know. I think if you're asking me, I like Durden, I like sub, but I don't even know if I'm going to bet it, man. I'll check the numbers. I haven't checked props yet, to be honest. But I definitely don't like betting Bruno. I'm not a fan of his, man, and I don't rate his wins. So yeah, that's all I got for that one.
Fair play. And listen, I think that they have a lot of, common opponents in that sense too. Tagiru Umbekov, JP buys. The things that are concerning on the Durden record would be, basically getting, club and sub by Makayev pretty quickly in that fight. Obviously losing to Makayev, no shame, but then you've seen a bunch of other guys force him to competitive decisions, attempt some submissions, get more offense going. And Cody kind of just got, pretty quickly dealt with in that occasion. The Jimmy Flick fight, obviously Jimmy's got one crazy move, right? It's like, if I could submit you early, then I can win the fight. And he was able to go out there and submit him quite quickly with that flying triangle choke. And then Tagiru Umbekov, his most recent fight, was able to finish him. Obviously, you have on the Bruno Silva ledger, he was able to go to decision with Tagiru Umbekov. That's what Tim was talking about in the chat. He thought that the tape showed that he's a better grappler. So I think that from a size and cardio perspective, I get where you're coming from, right? Durden kind of just doesn't fuck off. So if he's able to take your back late into round 3 and you're tired out, he's going to find a way to potentially finish. But he hasn't shown off that ability so far in the UFC. So maybe that's why you're getting some value to the number. Obviously, you look at Cody Durden's record in the promotion, 4 wins by decision, just 1 win via knockout. That was against JP Buys. So I think that Bruno Silva, he hasn't been beating great quality competition because that's who's been in front of him lately. But I thought he showed a pretty decent product against Dvorak and Tagir in losses as well. So should be a good scrap. The thing for me is like, you have this version of Bruno Silva that was around for the Tagir fights. And then he came back and he was aligned with Henry Cejudo and Neuroforce One. And if you remember, I told you about Neuroforce One a long time ago. I was like, I think they are pumping Henry Cejudo full of steroids. Again, personal opinion. And then he started aligning with them and his results turned around and he looks better physically. He looks faster. Now he's training at American Top Team. I mean, he went from Fight Ready, American Top Team. He's aligned himself with a lot of winners and a lot of successful people. And I want to know what the sessions were like between these guys in the gym at ATT, because I do think there's a chance they've grappled together before. I'd love to know how that turned out. So got to do some snooping. But in any case, my gut lean is towards Silva here. I heard that there is some hesitancy on the Durden side to take this fight. That would tell me that probably wasn't getting the best of it in the room, but a fight is a fight, right? How many times have we heard, hey, I got the better of this guy in the room, and then he goes out there and fucks you up? Like Joaquin Buckley and Albert Duraev, who I'm sure Albert Duraev, was sunning him in the grappling every day when they were punching each other in the face. And then when they were punching each other in the face, shit went sideways quick. So we'll see how it goes. Next up, my man, we got Kurt Hollabaugh taking on Kenan Krasuski. Why don't you start us off, Rich?
Yeah, sorry again on this bout. I haven't got much. I like the Kenan guy by decision. It's a nice number, like plus 300. I just don't like that takedown defense from Kurt. I don't like the fact he's 37. I don't think that he could have an advantage in the jiu-jitsu because this guy looks decorated himself, and from tape seems pretty good. He's very wary in positions. So I just think he's going to get top control and ride it out, man. Be happy to get his first UFC win. But yeah, the KO could be on. Both guys like to throw hands. That could be something on the feet. But yeah, I lean this new guy by decision, man. It's just that takedown defense from Kurt. It's very worrying, man. And usually I'd look for him to have a jiu-jitsu advantage over people because I do think he's got slick BJJ, but I don't think he has that here. So I'll lean this guy, man. But I don't even like his price. It was like minus 150. That's not cool.
Yeah, I think that Dixon just hit the nail on the head. Did you know that Kenan Krasuski's been training at Fight Nerd since January, switched camps, hottest camp in MMA right now? You're not wrong. I had been checking that as well. He's been, getting in rounds with the likes of Thiago Moises, Caio Barajo, as well as Rodolfo Vieira. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It seems to me like Kurt Hollabaugh has a chance to win the fight, right? But the one thing that you'd make as a criticism about Kenan Krasuski, he's very upright in his striking. He's there to be hit on the chin. When he does get hit on the chin, the reaction not always brilliant, right? Like sometimes my man does the old face plant. But I think that broadly speaking, a 33-year-old who's coming off of a very tough fight against Els Brenner, who, by the way, I think would probably splatter Kurt at this point. No disrespect to Kurt, but just like Els Brenner seems like a tough matchup. A guy who can compete in the jiu-jitsu and on the feet, he's going to fucking swing for your head. I think that this is a guy in Kenan Krasuski. Listen, I don't want to overhype the fighting nerds angle. If you've been there for 6 months, 7 months, how much can you really realistically learn? But he's already a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's already a guy that's got a lot of good regional experience, right? He's gone out there many times. And I think that for a guy like Kurt Hollabaugh, we kind of saw that even though he's had all this time, all this experience, he's still got a very flat, one-dimensional game at the end of the day, which is somebody very average like Trey Ogden can just take him down, press him to the ground, and he doesn't really have much he can do about it. So, yeah, it's fun when he does his, crazy submissions from the ground and whatever. He's kind of fun and scrappy, but ultimately I just haven't seen enough well-rounded technical game to want to bet him as a dog here. So with that being said, I think that I'm not going to be playing Kenan Krasuski minus 155, right? It's a little bit of a prove it spot for me here, but I do think he's got enough to get the job done, and I will be looking at the prop market for that fight. Next up, my man, we got Steve Garcia taking on Sung Woo Choi. I had said that there were two Chois that I thought maybe, founding the magic supplement of youth, and both of these guys, Sung Woo Choi and Duho Choi, I believe, have found this magic supplement. So in this case, he's taking on Steve Garcia, a tough son of a bitch, a scary guy to fight, right? Not a guy that you want to sign the contract with, right? He's a scary guy, goes out there with big power, a willingness to fight, doesn't fuck off very easily. However, he can be chinned. He can be knocked out. I think he's got 5 knockdowns, for and against in his last 5 UFC fights. Like he's out there just swanging and banging until somebody dies. And the thing that's been impressive is he uses his grappling to like set up more violence, right? When somebody goes for a takedown on him, he's trying to use the elevator sweep to get them on top and then roll through and then get back up punching and throwing shots. Like he just wants the fight to always be going. And same thing, he basically choked, what's his name, the poor guy, Mel Costa. He basically choked him unconscious and then started elbowing his carcass. I was like, brother, it's already good. It's already settled, man. He's just that kind of guy. So again, Steve Garcia, not the kind of guy you want, doing violent things to you, but he's a little bit predictable. He's a little bit, there to be hit. And he's definitely been splattered in some of these fights as well. So to see him as a favorite here is kind of curious, right? He's been an underdog in a lot of these fights where he's had success. And now he's favored against a guy in Sung Woo Choi who's not used to being an underdog, right? Very infrequently has he been a dog throughout his career. I think he's 1-1 in that odds range. And he lost to, what's his name? Movsar Evloev as like a plus 385 dog early in his career. So that was what we saw, from Sung Woo Choi in terms of, big underdog. He lost that one. As a closer underdog, as a moderate underdog, he's performed well. So I think that Sung Woo Choi, on all the steroids in the world, is probably the side. I also think that violence is the answer here. Both these guys are a little bit chinny. I think they both have like 5 knockdowns for and against. If I'm wrong, like give or take 1 knockdown on either of those sides of the ledger. But basically, you look at the last 5 fight sample, these guys are getting knocked down. They're knocking their opponents down. They're just swinging like crazy. And also, I think the club and sub could be on for either guy. So that's it. I just think that this is a violent ass fight. And both of these guys need a win to push themselves forward. I think for Sung Woo Choi, his career has been a letdown in terms of his expectations, where he expected to be at. We talk about aligning yourself with a new camp, Rich. He's been with the Team Zombie guys since his last fight. And he's basically said, like, Zombie is my hero. He has changed my life. He's changed my approach to fighting. I like all of what I'm hearing from Sung Woo Choi in the lead up to this fight. I do still think it's dangerous, though. So if I'm going to get involved, I'm probably going to have some violence hedges, some violence assurances here, because I do think Steve is live to kill anybody. But I don't know. The more I looked into this fight, the more I have a gut feeling Sung Woo Choi is just going to be a little bit sharper and he's going to knock this guy out in the first round. How about you, Rich?
Yeah, we agree, man. I was going to make Stevie the mush of the week, but went with Virna instead. I think you said, man, that was pretty in-depth. I do think that Garcia can be chinny. He is overly aggressive. And ironically, man, everyone tries to take him down in their fights. I think he could implement some grappling on Choi here and have his way there. But I don't think he's going to do that, man. Yeah, he's too aggressive, man, too mean. He likes to go for the finish. So, I like the Choi side. I think he's going to win. Like you said, he's on all the juice in the world as well. Stevie's usually got an advantage in the metrics over people, and he doesn't have that here either. I think he's met his match, man, and I like the Choi side at the number.
Well, there you have it. So we tend to agree on how we see this one, man. He's going to have a 1.5-inch reach advantage. He's going to meet him on height. And for Steve Garcia, I think that at 155, he doesn't have to cut as much weight. I almost feel like it's a little bit better for him. He's a big, strong guy anyways. All the way down at 145, I feel like that is like doing a lot of damage to his brain, right? It's like a huge weight cut. And for me, that's going to open up a little bit more, vulnerability. If you look back, guys, I actually the only time I bet on a Steve Garcia fight, I had Steve Garcia pretty hugely in a few different ways, like inside the distance. I think I had the KO prop and his money line against Charlie Ontiveros. Guys, I was sweating through my coat. I was sweating through my coat. I was like, I can't believe this. This guy is out there getting axe kicked in the head. He's like gushing blood all over the place. I was like, no, this cannot be happening. So for me, that was enough to know Steve Garcia is a favorite, dicey at best, right? He's lost as a big favorite before. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind, guys. Even when he's won as a big favorite, he makes you sweat for it. He goes out there and he gets dropped. He gets hurt. So you just want to be wary of that fact. But speaking of which, my man, we got a co-main event of the evening. On my first look this week, I was like, is this really the co-main event? Okay. If I was booking these UFCs, I don't know if that would be the case. But in any case, people love Jun Young Park, right? They love the Iron Turtle. He's a fun guy. He's got the fucking dance moves. He's doing his thing. And he's just a positive guy, brings a positive attitude, and he throws a lot, right? So he just creates action. He's out there trying to work hard for 15 minutes. Hard guy to dislike. On the other side of the ledger, right, Brad Tavares. I mean, if you've been watching UFC for 10 years, you've seen Brad Tavares the whole time. The guy's just a stalwart of the middleweight division. Is he going to fight for a title? No. Is he going to be a top 5 guy, a top 10 guy? No. But he could just go out there and bring a fight out of anybody. He went 5 rounds with Israel Adesanya. He's fought 4 champions. I think 3 other guys that fought for the title at middleweight. He's just as decent as it gets in the middleweight division. Seen everything, done everything. I've always described him as an elite anti-grappler. It's what he does well. You want to try and wrestle, you want to try and grapple, good fucking luck. And that's how I used to make money on Brad Tavares fights. Omari Akhmedov, faded him successfully. Antonio Carlos Jr., I faded him successfully. These are guys that are pretty solid wrestlers and grapplers, know how to go out there, pursue their takedowns, put a pace on. And he was able to stuff most of the takedowns. I think Omari got 2, maybe later on in that fight. But broadly speaking, he just forces you to the end of a single leg, and while you're wrestling, he punches you in your face. So it's like free opportunities. You got 2 hands on my leg, bing, bang, boom, and he just starts boxing, leaned against the fence. He's from Vegas in terms of like his local training outfit, right? Extreme Couture guy. No travel, no nothing, right? We just saw fucking Andre Muniz dog walk Jun Young Park all over the octagon a little bit. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it was like 11 takedowns and a ton of control time. That's his bread and butter is the grappling. His best attributes are in the grappling phase where he can take people down, ride the wrist, punch them 250 times. That's what he does best. When he's exchanging at boxing range, even when he's having success, he's vulnerable. Like he's out there trading with Gregory Rodriguez. Looks like Gregory Rodriguez is about to take the 1,000-yard stare. And then Gregory, while he's on autopilot, just hits him with another punch. And he's like, now I'm taking the 1,000-yard stare. And he starts falling backwards. I just think that Jun Young Park, his style of constantly making it a fight invites some risk. I had a huge position on him against Eric Anders, minus 200. And dude, Eric Anders took him down 3 times. He had 5 minutes of control. If Eric Anders knew how to throw significant strikes, I'd have lost that fucking bet. So I just was like, yo, Jun Young Park, if he doesn't have the physicality upside, if he can't get on top of somebody, he's just not covering these huge favorite price tags. Albert Duraev got hit one time in the nose. His nose went sideways, and he said, I don't want to fight no more. That's the God's honest truth. And we could say it nicer than that, but that's just what it was. My guy, Chad Hellinger, got his nose put to the other side of his face, and he had the decency to fight hard for 15 minutes and try against Sarichi Lang. This guy, Albert Duraev, broke his nose, and he was like, fuck that. I am out of here. And against Jin Young Park, you understand that, right? He's just going to keep touching it all night. But I feel like this is a spot where Brad Tavares, his level of chin, right? His level of durability has gone down significantly over time. This is the point in his career where maybe Jin Young Park could catch him and knock him out. I do think that if there's a lot of exchanging, it could be Jin Young Park just outworks him in terms of he threw more strikes by the end of the fight. But he's got a solid calf kick. He's got pretty solid combination boxing. And this isn't fucking Bruno Silva, who's got 20 career knockouts. This isn't one of these guys who's a very proven knockout threat, Gregory Rodriguez, right? It's like now we're dealing with somebody who's a little bit more of a point fighter in Brad Tavares. And if you're going to fight for points, if you're not going to be able to take him down, I feel like he's probably the side at plus money. But the chin, the durability, that's what concerns me. How about you, Rich?
Yeah, the chin and the durability don't concern me, man. What does concern me is the lack of fire that Brad's got now. I think he's on his way out. I don't think he gives a fuck, to be honest. I think he's showing up. Someone mentioned, I think Tim in the chat, saying about the Weidman fight. That wasn't a good look. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 1-1 going into the third. He's got one KO win. That was 2011. And I just don't think he's not going to push this fight. You know, Park might give him some opportunity to turn the tide or whatever, and I just don't think he's going to take it, man. I really like Park by decision, but the number sucks. It was like plus 150. Park's just going to do more, and yeah, win a decision. I wouldn't be surprised if Brad gets cut, to be honest. You know, he's been around a long time. You know, he has been in some good fights. You mentioned him, man. It's good to cash on him as an underdog back in the day. He has got a good takedown defense stat, like it was 80% or whatever, but you know, that was back in the day, man. There's always going to be a declining point for fighters. We did see it in the RoboCop fight, you know, like you said, he's durable and he got TKO'd in that one, but I don't think there's any shame, man. RoboCop's a big fucker on the juice.
He's built like a light heavyweight, dude. That guy is huge.
Exactly. So zero shame, man. So I still think the jury's out on his durability, which leads me to believe that Park will get the decision. I think the submission on the Park side is square. I don't see that happening at all. So yeah, say no more, man. Park by decision for me.
Fair enough, man. Yeah, this is a really weird fight for me. You know, I do think that the fight probably goes to distance more often than not. I don't think that you could rule out a split decision type scenario here. I think Jin Young Park is probably going to attempt a few takedowns, but I don't think that's going to be the bulk of his game plan. I think most of what he's going to try and do is box with Brad Tavares. Brad just doesn't throw at a great volume, right? He will probably land some solid counter combinations here. He will probably land some solid calf kicks here, but it does just make me think, you know, probably a close fight going to be left in the hands of the judges. And so for that reason, I might just keep my hands clean in this one.
Yeah.
But we got another 33-year-old here in Park compared to 36 for Tavares. And I mean, you can't have more miles than Tavares has in the UFC. You know, he's probably up there in terms of significant strikes absorbed. And shout out to Brad Tavares. I got to say, I got plus 108 on Dricus du Plessis against Brad Tavares pretty recently in his UFC run. So God bless America. God bless these gambling opportunities where we could get in early on these fighters before they get to the title opportunity. By the way, Extreme Couture, take a fucking bow, because the only guys to ever make it the distance with du Plessis in the UFC are Sean Strickland and Brad Tavares. So there you have it. Toughest guys on the face of Las Vegas. But with that being said, Rich, we've got a mush of the week. We've got a great fight to discuss in the main event. Before we do that, we're first just going to say, guys, if you don't mind, show a little support for the show. Drop a like if you don't mind. Get subscribed to the channel. We're doing this fight talk each and every week, so we hope that you guys will join us for the next card as well. But with that being said, Rich, the mush of the week, take it away, brother.
Yeah, so I like Lemos to win. Virna's the mush. There's a sick picture by Druvy on my Twitter if you want to all see that. I think speed, I think power, and I think steroids are going to win this fight. I don't even think Virna can go 5 rounds, man. If she got her way and Khabib'd Lemos for 3 rounds, I still think she would die in rounds 4 and 5. I don't think she will get her submission. The last sub win was against Felice Herring in like fucking 1985. I don't rate her jiu-jitsu that highly, to be honest. You know, she slips off the back. I think it's just opportunistic armbar shit, and I don't think she's going to catch it. So yeah, it just leads me to believe that she's going to gas and then get fucked up by Lemos. I don't mind the fight with Zhang for Lemos. I know she lost it, but she showed great heart. Even in round 5, man, she was reversing positions. She was still trying. There was no quitting her. And yeah, she might be 37, man, but she's got the cardio of a fucking 27-year-old. So I like that a lot. What else? Her only other loss really is Jessica Andrade, which you can forgive her for. I think she's got.
I can thank her for it, dude. 10 units. I was like, thank you for this exchange of currency. I appreciate you.
There you go, man. There's some decent losses, man. Zhang and Andrade. I think she's got everything you want in a woman's MMA fight at Lemos. That takedown defense is a bit suspect. And yeah, maybe Virna gets a takedown in round 1 and she gets some top control. But like I said, she's not going to find a submission. And at some point in this fight, in a 5-rounder, I think she is going to get cracked and she is going to get finished. And I made a point also, don't be so sure about the KO for Lemos, man. We know she's got some jiu-jitsu, and you might say in a jiu-jitsu match, Virna is much better. But, you know, you can be a black belt all you want. When you get cracked, when you're gassed, that all changes. Just look at Glover versus Jiri, man. Shit happens in MMA fights. So I'd be careful if you're just going to bet Lemos by KO. It could bite you in the ass. I think it's plus 200 for the ITD. That's probably a safer look. But yeah, what else? She's got no hands, Virna. She's slow. She literally reminds me of Roxy, you know, the way she's throwing her strikes. Her takedown entries are bad. You know, she goes for these double legs, but they're telegraphed. You know, she could literally get knocked out in round 1 or 2 if she doesn't get her takedowns, man. It's night and day on the feet. So Lemos is the side all day, and I think you're going to miss dog money. I see it changing, man. So it wouldn't surprise me if Lemos ends up being the favorite in this fight and it flips.
Fair play, my man. My gut instinct here was that Amanda Lemos was the side at plus money. I would need plus money to take either woman in this fight. That was kind of my gut feeling. And you might have an opportunity to get on plus money Virna before all is said and done. This is what's confounding me about this matchup. I rewatched a bunch of their footage today, and I think Lemos has horrific takedown defense. I really do. You know, I don't think that she has the right ideas in terms of her takedown defense. There was a few times in the Zhang Weili fight where, like, it's not Zhang Weili did something spectacular. It's like Amanda Lemos has her feet crossed. She's fucking, you know, she's threw like a huge overhand. She's now out of position. And so Zhang Weili like wraps a body lock and fucking knee cuts her backwards over, and she's just flat. Now, what I do like is, to your point, she's very aggressive, right? Even from her back, she attempted a Darce in the first round. She attempted a guillotine. She attempted a ton of different offense when she was on her back. The one thing is, though, Zhang Weili, I've always felt this way, is like very positionally sound, right? She knows what she's kind of doing to move wrestling move to wrestling move, but her jiu-jitsu is not great. You know, I don't think. I think it's coming along, but like it's mostly just she's physically fucking strong. And I was like, Lemos is also, that's kind of what her bread and butter is, right? When she submitted Miranda Granger, it wasn't the greatest technique you've ever seen. It's just that she squeezed her head so hard that Miranda Granger's head was about to pop off. And so she just went purple and fell asleep. I think that I look at her Virna Jandiroba, and she does have the technical skills. That's what I see. It's like technically she knows what she's doing when she wrestles. She's like getting to the hip. She's pulling that near leg in. She's like slowly dragging somebody down. She's riding the wrist. I like her transitions on top in terms of like going to the back. She like rides the leg in, and then she could throw that other hook over the back. She does a lot of things right, but I think your criticisms of her are fair as well. I don't think she's as physical as Lemos. You know, the thing that's troubling for me is who is the right archetype to look at as a comparison for Virna Jandiroba's career, because Lupita Godinez, physically strong. I think technically Virna just outdoes her in terms of like, you know, techniques. But then watching the fight back, it was like a lot of mistakes from Lupi. You know, how do I evaluate that fight? I don't know. Then I look at the Marina Rodriguez fight. Marina just had nothing for her technically, right? Like every time they got into exchanges, it was Virna advancing position, getting to a better spot. Then you look at the Angela Hill fight. Angela Hill's been showing good career form lately, but that was, another one where it's like the kind of archetype that she's always struggled with, a really profoundly talented grappler. Okay. Losing to Hebos, losing to Duran, losing to Esparza, all those in common is like they have better grappling techniques. Like every one of them just is a better grappler at root than Virna Jandiroba. And they can mix it up a little bit, right? Like Mackenzie has some power on the feet where Virna doesn't really have that. Amanda Hebos on the feet has a lot of volume and activity. She throws. I don't think she's got the most power, but she does attempt a lot of offense, right? And then for Carla Esparza, former champion, known for her wrestling, difficult to submit. So I just think of her as like, okay, we don't really know what exactly to expect from Virna Jandiroba. So I'm not going to lay a chalk price with her. But if she's getting to takedowns in this fight, she could make this look very easy, right? And I say that because when I had Jessica Andrade by submission, I'm anticipating Jessica Andrade is going to go out there and get her takedowns, right? She's a strong girl physically. She's got the ability to like pick people up, turn them sideways, right? But that never happened. The finishing sequence to that fight is one of the weirdest finishing sequences in UFC history, right? She ducks under like a punching attempt, comes up to the head and arm, standing choke. And I've almost finished this in live competition once before, the like standing head and arm choke. But it's very difficult if you can't get leverage against a fence or something like that. But the things that I hated were the reactions from Lemos. Lemos seems to me like a girl who does very well in her goes in jiu-jitsu, but seems like she's not a person that gets put in bad situations very often. And so when I saw her locked in this choke and she's like reaching up for the stars and just getting like thrown around, Andrade isn't even as tall as she is. So Andrade is like reaching up for this choke and like throwing her around up here where theoretically you shouldn't be very strong. So I just thought a lot of it was positional failure, like not knowing what to do there. And we haven't seen that tested very often. When we did see it tested against Zhang, I didn't like what I was seeing from her in terms of like the positions. She would spend many minutes consolidated on bottom position in like perpendicular rides, a T shape, where it's like, you're not going to get up from that against somebody that's good, And if you do try to, they're going to take your back. Because like that's the trade-off is like I can turn my hips and get back up, but they're going to take my back in the process. I don't think that Virna is proven over 5 rounds. I don't know that Lemos is like better over 5 than she would be over 3. Like, do you know what I mean? So I don't feel like I have a huge edge on the analysis of this fight. I do feel like Pick'em is appropriate. They're both old, right? They both are not the most marketable in the division. I think Amanda is much more marketable, but she also fought for the title already. So parity, marketability, you could put on either side of the scale. And for me, I just don't have a strong tilt either way. The way I would think about playing this personally is being contrarian, because that's the way that I typically approach these things. And you had said Lemos by submission. That's a contrarian take, right? Everybody's thinking, hey, if Lemos does win, it's got to be a knockout. But if you have the ability to knock somebody out, right, you could hurt them and then technically wrap up a submission, club and sub, baby, right? Make it easier on yourself. Or we've seen that Amanda Lemos, it's not all about technique. It's about if she grabs a hold of something, she's strong enough that she could squeeze and then you go to sleep. So it's just like, you can't tough guy a choke. It's not always about technique. You can have one move that's a black belt move, a guillotine, a Darce choke, whatever it is, where if you lock it up, anybody's fucked, right? And we've seen Rodolfo Vieira get tapped out in the UFC. Don't tell me that people can't get tapped out. So I think that Amanda Lemos, obviously that's a contrarian angle, her by sub. Virna Jandiroba via TKO. Let me make this wild pitch to you. She's not going to finish her, I don't think, with strikes, right? But imagine she puts her in an armbar. Is she going to tap? Is Amanda Lemos going to give up? No, she's probably going to let that shit break. Because like you said, dude, she's 36, 37. She's at the end of her run. She's probably going to do everything she can to resist. That's kind of what we've seen from her in the past. So, yeah, I think that Virna TKO at 16-1, I'm telling you that it's cashed before at the same price in the UFC against Kanako Murata, right? And Murata's strong physically, has a strong resolve, didn't want to give up, and she broke her arm. So, like, I don't know. I just don't think it's the most wild take, especially when you have 5 rounds to work with. The ends by KO is going to be like plus 200 in this fight because what's her name? Lemos by KO is going to be plus 200. So just something that I think about when you can get, either girl at a 14-1, 16-1 type of method in a 5-round fight. I don't know. Let's see. How about any other closing thoughts that you got, Rich?
I don't mind that, man. I see what you're saying. I did put Virna at sub or bust, but I don't mind the ITD.
That was my write-up earlier this week as well. I literally said, I was like, it feels like she's sub or bust. But that was what I went back and re-looked at. I was like, she doesn't have any wins by KO except for the one where she gets an injury. It's like, I could see that. Yeah. Lemos is a tough bid.
I just disagree with the other stuff, man, about I think you have got plenty of sample size. I think both girls have shown you that one hasn't got the cardio to go 5 rounds because Virna's blowing, man, in round 3 in her most recent fights. So that just leads me to believe in round 4 and 5, no matter how rounds 1, 2, and 3 have gone, she's going to be on death's door, man. And Lemos in that Wiley fight, like I said, she was reversing positions, man. She's got the cardio to go 5 rounds. She could even go fucking 6, 7. I think she's on.
Who would win in a jiu-jitsu match, Zhang Li or Virna, in your opinion?
Oh, Virna, probably.
That's how I feel as well, and that's why I'm like, I think that some of the mistakes that Zhang Li makes in terms of control is based on aggression. It's based on like a little bit of inexperience in some of those positions. Like she just dominates physically, so she can make a mistake and just reconsolidate. There were several times she did that. Virna is like a technical player where everything she's doing has a purpose. She's not as physical. She might get bucked off, especially in round 1 and 2, but I do think she makes a lot of the right decisions in grappling where you see like she goes step 1, step 2, step 3. And a lot of times she runs out of clock before the end of a round where she could do something with the position. But that was what I did see that I liked from Virna's game. I agree with you. She gets tired over these 3-round fights, but now she's been scheduled for 5-round one time. And we get to see, does she come out and like spend all her gas in 15 minutes? Then we know, okay, it's just not going to work out for her. But if she goes out there and just paces herself properly and takes her down, 2 minutes to work in each round, that is where it's like her in her office, right? Her where she's theoretically getting less tired. So I do agree with you. Lemos more proven on the cardio front, but I also think she's such a takedown defense liability that I almost think it's a little bit of a wash. That's why I could see minus 110 either way here, which is what it's trending towards, I feel. Liam, is Virna the female Claudio Puelles? I don't think that's a fair comparison. She doesn't just have a knee bar, right? She does do different maneuvers, but I can't see Amanda Lemos getting controlled for the full 5. So I do think she's going to have her moments. I think she's going to land some shots. It's going to be a sweaty fight. But Virna striking versus Lupi was god-awful, says Cowabunga in the chat. I tend to agree. In any case, guys, we got to call it there. Hope you guys have enjoyed the show. If you have questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and fire those off in the comment section down below. We'll try and get to as many as possible. I'm going to continue doing my research. We'll see if we have more bonus content available this week. Hopefully we will. And without further ado, Rich, let the people know where they can find you, brother.
Yeah, get me on Twitter. You want my bets for this card, $3, link in the bio. Got a Discord group and all that good stuff.
Cheers. And guys, if you're looking for more, I did a show earlier this week, my first look at the card, all time stamped. If you want to hear my thoughts early in the week, before I've let the tape get to me, before I've let my biases get to me over the course of the week, this should be a fun card. Not the greatest set of name value, but either way, we're going to be back breaking it all down, whether it's a great card or a shitty card. God bless you all. I hope you enjoy these fights. Come back next time. We're having all the same fun again. See you guys.